So, our case we are breaking down today is Eastern Airlines Inc. versus Gulf Oil Corporation. My name is Will Bailey.
I'm Andy Mills.
And I am Miles Hazelton.
So, first, before we dive deeper into anything with this case, we need to go through a brief overview of what this case is about, who was involved, and what relationship these two parties had, and why there was a case against each other. So, Eastern Airlines was a popular American airline that operated until 1991. It was one of the big four domestic airlines in the United States for much of the 20th century. Gulf Oil Corporation was a major American oil company that dominated the global petroleum market in the mid 20th century. They are most known for having the world's first drive in gas station, and they established themselves as a well recognized brand until they were acquired by Chevron Corporation in 1984. So, what was the relationship between these two parties? Well, in 1972, a contract was formed between them. The contract stated that Gulf Oil Corp would provide jet fuel to Eastern Airlines for 5 years. Eventually, Gulf Oil Corp became unhappy with the price that Eastern Airlines was paying for the fuel and decided to stop supplying it to them. As a result, Eastern Airlines sued Gulf Oil Corp for a breach of conduct or contract. So, what were the issues and facts in this case? What were the details of the contracts and what happened to the oil prices? Well, Eastern Airlines and Gulf Oil Corporation had a well established, mutually beneficial relationship lasting decades. This history of partnership highlights the trust built between them over time. A new agreement was formed to supplement the existing contract, not replace it. This demonstrated that both parties intended to continue working together while adapting to the changing market conditions in the oil industry. However, the contract did include a provision for the fuel price to be linked to the cost of crude oil using an indicator. This indicator was the average of the posted prices for the West Texas sour. At the time, this was consistent with industry standards in the oil industry. This indicator allowed fuel prices to adjust up or down based on the market trends. In 1973, the U.S. government implemented a two-tier pricing system for the oil industry as a result of this policy, as a result of the oil crisis at the time. This policy distinguished between old oil, which was subject to price controls, and new oil, which could be sold at a higher market-driven price. This contract prevented Gulf Oil Corp from taking advantage of the new pricing policy, as the indicator only reflected old oil prices.
So now you may ask, what are the relevant rules in this case? This case falls under the general idea of contract law, and there are four main topics in this case, which are valid contracts, contract performance, commercial impracticality, and breach of contract. Now moving on to the rules defined in business law, which are, before we break down this case, it is important to understand the relevant concepts under contract law. A contract is an agreement formed by two parties who each agree to perform or to refrain from performing some act now or in the future. There are four requirements of a valid contract, which are agreement, consideration, contractual capacity, and legality. Agreement is the meeting of minds regarding the contract terms. It includes two events, an offer and acceptance. An offer is a promise or commitment to perform a specific act in the future, and acceptance is the notification of receiving parties that they agree to be bound by the contract terms. Consideration is the value given in return for the promises of performance. Consideration must include legal sufficient value and the bargains for exchange. Contractual capacity is the legal ability of competent parties to enter into contracts. Legality is the idea that contracts to be valid and enforceable, and it must be formed for a legal purpose. Contract performance is a fulfillment of one's duties arising under a contract. Moving on to rules defined under business law. A breach of contract occurs when one party fails to perform or fulfill their legal obligations without a valid defense. When this occurs, the non-breaching party may have legal grounds to sue the breaching party for damages. Performance may be excused when it becomes much of difficult or expensive than the other parties originally thought when the contract was formed. This is a commercial impracticality. However, the anticipated performance must become significantly more difficult or costly, and the added burden must not have been foreseeable by either party. Now moving on to the plaintiff's argument. In this case, Eastern Airlines' argument involved a breach of contract, and it is a valid contract with no defenses. Eastern relied on Gulf Oil as fuel to operate their business. Gulf Oil is contractually bound to provide fuel at the agreed upon price. Market risk and regulatory changes should have been expected, especially given the viability of the oil industry.
Okay, moving on to the defendant's argument. In this case, Gulf Oil is going to believe that there's no breach of contract. They're going to go ahead and say that they should be allowed to adjust their prices depending on the market shifting because it is essentially a commercial impracticability. The two-tier pricing controls were unforeseen, making it significantly more expensive for them and their company. So they are arguing that they can adjust it as they see fit. So the ruling here, the courts are going to rule in favor of Eastern Airlines. They're going to be a rewarded remedy for specific performance, honoring the original agreement of the contract. Again, you cannot use the two-tier system to change your pricing because the market, even if it significantly decreases your ability to produce profit, again, honoring the original contract. So the conclusion, Eastern Airline is going to have a major impact on contract law. It sets a precedent for the rest of the contract terms and especially commercial impracticability. Again, the marketing or how the market reflects in your business is not, it's not going to be able to, it's not going to be able to, you cannot shift your original policy, so even in volatile markets, you cannot simply exit or modify the contract because of the financial strain. Thanks for watching.